My name is Sarah, and for 8 years, I believed loyalty would always be rewarded. I joined the company straight out of university. Back then, there were only 12 employees sharing one small office, and everyone knew everyone by name. We celebrated birthdays together, stayed late to meet impossible deadlines, and dreamed about the day the company would become successful. I gave that job everything I had. I missed family gatherings, canceled holidays, and worked countless weekends because I genuinely believed I was helping build something that would last. Whenever people asked why I never looked for a better paying job, I always gave the same answer. Because this company believed in me before anyone else did. 8 years later, the company had grown into one of the biggest firms in the city. I was no longer the nervous graduate who walked through those doors on her first day. I had become the senior operations manager. One Monday morning, my boss called me into his office with a smile on his face. He said the company had hired someone new. He wanted me to train her personally because, according to him, nobody knows this job better than you. I took it as a compliment. I had no idea I was about to train the person who would take my place. The new employee arrived the following Monday. Her name was Emily, and she looked just as nervous as I had on my first day 8 years earlier. She carried a notebook everywhere, apologized whenever she made the smallest mistake, and thanked me for explaining even the smallest tasks. I liked her immediately. She was eager to learn, respectful, and never acted as though she already knew everything. Before long, she was following me to meetings, taking notes while I explained our systems, and asking thoughtful questions that showed she genuinely wanted to improve. My boss seemed pleased with how quickly she was settling in. Almost every afternoon, he would stop by my office to ask how far her training was going. I always gave the same answer. She's doing really well. As weeks passed, I taught her everything I knew. I showed her how to handle difficult clients, organize projects under pressure, and solve the problems that weren't written in any company handbook. I wanted her to succeed because I remembered how overwhelming those first few months had been for me. One Friday afternoon, I overheard 2 managers talking outside the conference room. They lowered their voices as soon as they noticed me. I didn't think much of it until I heard one sentence before they walked away. She still has no idea. For some reason. Those words stayed with me long after they were gone. I tried to forget what I had overheard. After all, companies are full of private conversations, and not everything has something to do with you. So I carried on as usual. Emily was learning quickly. Within a month, she was handling projects I normally managed myself. I was actually proud of her. It felt good watching someone grow into the role the same way I once had. Then little things began to change. Meetings I had always attended suddenly took place without me. Important emails stopped appearing in my inbox. When I asked about them, manager smiled and said they had simply forgotten to include me. I believed him. Until it happened again. And again. One afternoon, I walked past the conference room and saw Emily sitting beside the senior management team. She looked just as surprised as I was. When she noticed me through the glass, she gave me an awkward smile, as if she expected me to be in the meeting too. I smiled back and kept walking. For the first time in 8 years, I felt like a visitor in the company I had helped build. A few days later, my boss asked me to prepare a detailed document explaining every part of my job. He said the company wanted to standardize its training process so future employees could learn more efficiently. It sounded reasonable. In fact, I was flattered. For nearly 2 weeks, I poured everything I knew into that document. I included the systems I had created, the shortcuts that saved us hours every week, and the lessons I had learned after 8 years solving problems no one else wanted to handle. When I finally handed it over, my boss thanked me and said it would become the company's official operations manual. I felt proud. A week later, he asked me to let Emily handle one of our biggest clients on her own. His explanation was simple. She needs confidence. I agreed. Then another client was assigned to her. And another. Before long, most of my responsibilities had quietly disappeared. My workload became lighter with each passing week, but no one explained why. One Friday afternoon, I logged into the company's scheduling system to check my calendar. Almost every meeting for the following month had been removed. Only one meeting remained. It had no agenda. Just a time, and the words, "Meeting with Human Resources." I barely slept the night before the meeting. I kept telling myself there had to be a simple explanation. Maybe it was my annual performance review. Maybe the company was planning another promotion. After 8 years of loyalty, I never imagined I had anything to worry about. The next morning, I walked into the Human Resources office 5 minutes early. My manager was already there. So was the HR director. Neither of them smiled. The atmosphere felt nothing like the meetings I had attended over the years. The HR director thanked me for my dedication and praised my contributions to the company's growth. She spoke for several minutes about my professionalism, my commitment, and the positive impact I had made. Then she slid a white envelope across the table. My heart sank before I even touched it. It was my termination letter. According to the company, they were restructuring the department. I couldn't believe what I was reading. Just 1 week earlier, I had been writing the training manual they said would shape the company's future. Now they were telling me there was no longer a place for me in it. As I left the office carrying the small box that held 8 years of memories, I walked past Emily's desk. She looked up, saw the box in my hands, turned completely pale. I expected Emily to look relieved. Instead, she looked horrified. She stood up so quickly that her chair nearly fell over and rushed after me into the hallway. She kept apologizing, but I couldn't understand why. Then, through tears, she admitted something that made my knees go weak. When she accepted the job, she had been told the company was expanding and needed an additional operations manager. She had never been told she was replacing anyone. The training wasn't meant to help settle into a new position. It was meant to make sure she could do mine before they let me go. She said she had only discovered the truth that morning when she saw my name on the termination paperwork. She had argued with the management. She even offered to resign, but they refused. According to them, the decision had been made weeks ago. I looked at her and realized she wasn't the person who had betrayed me. She had been used, just like I had. As I walked out of the building for the last time, I turned back and looked at the office where I had spent 8 years of my life. The security guard opened the door for another employee and quietly said, "We'll miss you, Sarah." It was the first time that day anyone had made me feel like I mattered. The first few weeks after losing my job were the hardest of my life. Every morning, I woke up at the same time out of habit, only to remember there was nowhere I needed to be. I sent out dozens of job applications. Some companies never replied. Others politely told me I was overqualified. After 8 years of giving everything to one company, I suddenly found myself questioning whether I had ever been good enough at all. Then one afternoon, my phone rang. It was Emily. She sounded exhausted. The company was in trouble. The operations manual I had written explained what to do, but not why things were done that way. When unexpected problems started appearing, nobody knew how to fix them. Projects were falling behind. Longtime clients were leaving. Even employees who had worked there for years were becoming frustrated. Emily admitted she had done everything she could. Then she quietly told me something I never expected to hear. 3 senior employees had already resigned. Not because I had been fired, but because the company treated its most loyal employee unfairly. For a long moment, I said nothing. Then Emily asked the one question I never thought I would hear. "Would you be willing to come back, just long enough to help us?" I closed my eyes for a moment before answering. Just a few weeks earlier, they had walked me out of the building with a cardboard box. Now they wanted me back because everything was falling apart. I wasn't angry. I was simply done. I thanked Emily for being honest and told her none of what had happened was her fault. She had accepted a job, just as anyone would have. The decision had belonged to the management, not to her. Before ending the call, I gave her one piece of advice. Don't stay in a company that only values people after they've lost them. A month later, I accepted a position with one of the company's biggest competitors. For the first time in years, I worked for people who listened to my ideas instead of taking them for granted. One morning, my new director walked into my office with a smile. "I don't understand why they would let someone like you go," he said. I smiled politely. Neither did I. A few weeks later, I heard my former company had lost one of its biggest contracts. Not because I left. Because they had forgotten something every successful business eventually learns. You can replace an employee's position, but you can't replace the years of trust, experience, and wisdom they take with them.